So far, all the articles we've looked at have only focused on the benefits of collaborative activities and information retrieval in organizations. But I want to move away for a moment from that for the final part of this presentation, because we've read multiple times, initially in the first article about the dynamic nature of knowledge, and now again in my article about collaborative information retrieval, that a effective organization or working environment is one in which, quote, knowledge cultures are in place. So as we talked about in the first article, a dynamic kind of workplace where information is constantly being shared and people are repeatedly encouraged to continue to learn information to better themselves and maintain an open and eager mind. In fact, the very first two sentences in my article, the Hansen one, are, quote, today, it is essential for professional workers to both stay informed and inform their work environments in order to effectively manage knowledge and stay competitive, efficient, and innovative. The flow of information, for instance, gathering, assimilation, and creation of information, involves increasingly complex means, unquote. For me, this kind of statement makes it really clear that a strong communication system is crucial to the success of an organization. And I think this raises a number of pretty important questions, most notably, what happens when a breakdown occurs in the flow of information or when the communication structures in place are not solid? And another question could be, what are some of the potential consequences of CIR gone wrong? And these are just a few of the questions that I want to explore in the next few sections. So let's look at a famous example. It's also undeniably tragic of this in action. If you go to our annotated bibliography, you'll see a source written by J.T. Garner, who writes about how on February 1st, 2003, the space shuttle known as the Columbia exploded when it tried to re-enter Earth's atmosphere. I really recommend reading this paper. It's kind of fascinating and sad and admittedly somewhat frustrating when you read all the ways in which there were red flags that people missed about how the shuttle should have came back and it shouldn't have come back. Anyway, the main point of the article is that the investigation conducted after the disaster revealed that debris at liftoff was likely the cause of the crash, but the official report actually suggested that NASA's own organizational communication structure was just as much to blame because there were significant gaps in what were called the, quote, knowledge networks, unquote, of NASA organizational members. And by knowledge networks, I don't just mean all the stuff a person knows or has knowledge of being kind of clustered together. No, on the contrary, I'm actually referring to a precise term from the article, which mentions how as organizations become more complex and require that their employees learn more information and complete more difficult tasks, this can become a problem because there is, quote, a finite limit to the amount of information one person within that organization can possess at any given time. So as that person connects with others, he or she has the opportunity to share information, and thus, through communications and connections with other people, that person becomes a part of a knowledge network, unquote. Essentially, this just basically means that knowledge networks are really similar to collaborative activities in that they help members of an organization receive the information they need from others in order to complete a task. But the Garner article about the Columbia disaster shows that there were really significant gaps in the knowledge networks of NASA members, and those gaps hindered the information flow of the entire organization about all the potential dangers of having the astronauts return the way they did. So, in other words, it wasn't as if no one in the organization was aware of some of the possible complications. That's not true at all. For instance, several engineers expressed uneasiness in emails about the condition of the rocket, and there are numerous other examples that you can read about in the article of red flags. But essentially, the main problem was, as Garner perfectly phrases it in the paper, quote, the people with the right information did not know how to pass that information on to decision makers, and decision makers did not have the best information and did not know that they needed more information, unquote. And as you can imagine, this was a disaster waiting to happen, and happen it did, unfortunately, with the fatal consequence.